Hey, hey, everybody. Happy Thursday. I see Leslie and Joy and Mary all in the chat. Thank you, ladies. So that's our leadership team. So if you're in the chat, chat them up. It's been a few minutes since I have done a Thursday live stream, maybe like a month. So it's good to be back. I was supposed to be back, had one scheduled for last Thursday. And I guess there was some like big, what do you call it? It's like some cyber attack or something on some platforms. And I don't know if that affected StreamYard, but I couldn't get in, I couldn't stream or anything, couldn't even get on the website. So anyway, just decided to bag it for the week and reschedule and come back this Thursday. So if you are watching in the chat, please let us know that you're here and let us know where you are watching from. If you have any questions or comments or anything that you want to add to the discussion today, please drop that in the chat. This is kind of an anything goes. This is our chance to engage with each other. I do have a few different things that I want to chat with you guys about today, but we'll have Q&A. And if you guys have topics, like I said, please don't hesitate to put those in the chat. And our leadership team is in the chat, Mary, Joy, and Leslie. So if you have specific questions that they can answer, they will reply back to you as well. Hey there, Kyle, in New Mexico, but a Washington resident. Well, I bet you're enjoying New Mexico's kind of blue, I think. They've got some kind of crazy, weird stuff that's been going on with their legislature. I know they've got some weird gun policy stuff that they have been doing in the last year or so. So I don't know how much better it is than Washington. It seems like a lot of the states to the west of the Mississippi are just kind of all like trending off the Minnesota. Oh, Minnesota is crazy. It's all just like the whole like half of the country seems like it's just going to fall into the Pacific. Let's hope not. Let's keep up the fight. So I want to first start off with some really good news on the SCOTUS ruling in the Scrimeti case yesterday that pertains to Tennessee's so-called gender affirming care ban for minor children. The Supreme Court ruled that the ban could be upheld, that it did not discriminate. That was the claim, that the law was discriminating against so-called transgender children, which I don't particularly believe that there is such thing as a transgender child. That would imply that a child has been born in the wrong body, and I do not believe that. So doctors can still give this so-called gender affirming care. They can give the cross-sex hormones, they can give the puberty blockers, and I don't know how it would impact surgery. They can do that if it's medically necessary. Now, here's where we're going to see this go south. You're going to have some doctors that are, you're going to have some woke doctors that will say it's medically necessary, even if it's not. So it's going to be interesting how this all shakes out. Now, this ruling does only apply to the state of Tennessee. So a lot of people have commented to me about this ruling, specifically our audience in Washington, saying, well, Bob Ferguson probably won't abide by this ruling. Well, no, he won't, because there's no ban in his state. There's no ban that the legislature has passed in Washington. So it does not apply to Washington or any other state for that matter. What it will do is it will help states such as Florida, Montana. I think there are like 26 states that have put some kind of policy into place protecting minor children from these harmful procedures. It will help them when their laws are challenged. And I think many of them have been. In fact, Montana's law, I believe it's Senate Bill 99, just last month. So Senate Bill 99 was passed in Montana. Montana is a red state, Republican legislature, Republican governor, passed a ban on so-called gender affirming care for minor children. Last month, a judge in Montana who was appointed by a previous Democrat governor in Montana put on a permanent, I don't know what the legal term for it is. It injunction? There's a permanent, they cannot, excuse me, he has blocked that bill permanently. So I'm not sure legally. I don't really know how that would work. I did reach out to my buddy Bill Kirk from Washington Gun Law just because I thought maybe he'd know from a legal perspective, even though it's not a gun policy. He would probably know about how that might be impacted by this ruling in Tennessee. If it's been permanently blocked, would they have to pass a new law and like redo the whole thing? I don't know. So Bill actually called me just a few minutes before I went live. I imagine he's calling about the text I sent him earlier today. So I'll chat with him about that, and hopefully I can push out some information on what that will look like for the folks in Montana. But it makes a good point for all these activist judges that have been appointed around the country that are ruling against these policies that are enacted by Republican-led legislatures, or even, what we're seeing with the Trump administration and how so many of his policies, executive orders, and actions are being blocked by activist judges. And this is a really big problem because these people are not ruling on the Constitution or on the law. They really are political actors, and they are making it's a big problem in our country. I think the hijacking of our judicial system is really something that we need to correct. I don't necessarily know how we correct it, but it's easy to see, like, when you have these good laws in a state like Montana, and then you have an activist judge who was appointed by a Democrat for a lifetime appointment, they can just overturn these things. And, you've got voters who elected these Republicans because they wanted these types of policies passed. And then you have an activist judge who just comes in and overturns it. And then children are not protected. And so I think the judicial system is a huge issue. The other thing that I think is a really big problem with this particular ruling that we're going to see is that this has really poked the trans activist bear. And we're going to see in blue states, we're going to see legislators and executives in blue states really double down on their LGBTQ agenda and making access to so-called gender affirming care available to minor children, accessible to minor children. We know several states have what I call transgender trafficking. Washington passed Senate Bill 5599 in 2023, which allows children, minor children, who want to access gender affirming care to be housed in a host home or a youth shelter without parent notification. So your kid can go to school and get shuttled off to some host home because they say that they want to access puberty blockers, and my parents don't agree with that. They won't let me do it. So they get shuttled off to a host home, and DCYF, the Department of Children, Youth, and Families, would get notified, but nobody tells the parent that their kid is now in this host home and they're going to be getting access to puberty blockers, and it's going to be paid for by you, the taxpayer. Colorado has similar laws. New York has similar laws. California has similar laws. Oregon probably has similar laws. So I think that with this ruling, and if you've been watching on social media and seen any Democrat lawmakers and governors, and they're all really speaking out about how, we're going to protect trans kids, and this is going to be a huge issue. This is going to be a huge issue in blue states. And I think that we're really going to see them double down on this. And I think you're going to see even more than what we're already seeing with the real separation of blue states and red states, and kind of having that fighting, kind of this war between states, where one state has a policy that allows kids to be trafficked in from other states, like Colorado. And then the law in that state protects whoever is helping the kid get these services. So if you had, like some LGBTQ activist take a kid from Texas to Colorado, the Colorado laws are going to protect whoever brought the kid there. They're going to protect the kid. They're going to protect the provider from any kind of recourse by the state of Texas. So this is really dangerous. It really, I wish people would look at it as human trafficking for transgender services. It's not sexual trafficking, which I think is what we usually think of when we think of human trafficking. But it is human trafficking because they are taking these children who are confused, they're impressionable, and they are doing these things to them that are extremely dangerous and harmful. And oftentimes they cannot be reversed. And, that's the whole point of a parent, is to protect your child from these decisions that they're not ready to make. And from, I always get the visual in my head is always the white van, where the kidnapper guy is in the white. It's got like, I have like this very 80s picture in my head of the white van, and the offering the little kids candy and want to get in my van. Because we've always told our kids, my kids are all over 18 now, and we were told as children by our parents that you don't talk to strangers, you don't take candy from strangers, you don't keep secrets from parents, all of these things that now it's like flipped. Now parents are the bad guy, and the strangers are going to be your parent now if your parents don't allow you to get these crazy services. So I think it's a huge win. And it sets a precedent. And so I'm happy for that. I am very concerned about where this is going to lead, and how, the LGBTQ demon has really been stoked here. And I think we're going to see a lot of backlash in blue states. And Washington, for example, has a bill that's been filed this year. They're out of session for 2025, but it automatically gets refiled for 2026. And it's an amendment to the state constitution that would enshrine the right to abortion and gender affirming care in the state of Washington. So what they need for that is they need 2/3 of the legislature to vote yes to pass it out of the legislature. And then if it passes, then it goes on the ballot in November. So it would be November of 2026 for a vote of the people. And I think it's safe to say that we know how the outcome of that would turn out in a state like Washington, where it's not the votes that counts, but who counts the votes. Plus, they've passed even more policies this year, such as automatic voter registration, making the whole system a lot worse than it already was. So those are the kinds of things that we're going to be on the lookout for. And of course, if you live in a blue state and have children in a blue state, please do everything that you can to protect your children. Kind of on a similar note, so today is the 19th. On Tuesday, June 17th, the Trump administration announced that they would not be funding the LGBTQ option of the 988 crisis line. Now, I have a lot of experience with the 988 line. It's something that in public schools, at least in Washington state, they tell the kids about, tell students about this crisis line. And I don't have any problem with kids having, people who have mental health and issues and they need help. I don't have an issue with that. I think we've gone so far with the indoctrination through under the guise of mental health, that it's hard to support those efforts. But in Washington State, so there's a federal level of funding for the 988 line, and then states can also fund it. And Washington has been ramping up their funding for the 988 line. For they did it last year or the year before, and then they tried to do it again this year. I don't recall if it passed or not. But in the schools, they teach kids about using the 988 line. And if you push option 3, this is for the, LGBTQ issues. And when you push option 3, you get connected to the Trevor Project. And the Trevor Project is a huge LGBTQ activist group. They're very politically involved. They're very influential in LGBTQ policy on a state level and on a federal level. And they have gotten a ton of federal funding from the government, from taxpayers, to operate the 988 option 3. And so the Trump administration just announced on Tuesday that they are removing that funding, and the press 3 option now is going to be for all people. I don't know if it's specifically for all youth, but it is no longer going to be an LGBTQ option. If you're in a state like Washington, I don't know how that's going to look. I don't know if that removes it at a state level or not. But I kind of would think that if the state has their own policy in place, then they could fund, they could fund the Trevor Project to continue that press 3 option. So I have to do a little digging into that. I just saw it this morning, and so I haven't really had time to get down in the weeds on that one. But basically what happens if your child calls 988 and presses option 3, and they say something like, I'm feeling suicidal, which suicidal ideation is an extremely common thing with teenagers. And so what happens if they say that they're having these suicidal thoughts, or that they, are questioning their gender or their sexual identity, the emergency vehicles, the ambulance will come and pick up the child, and they may ring your doorbell, and they'll let you know, hey, we picked up your child, or hey, we're here to pick up your child. You don't have a choice. And usually they coordinate with the child. They tell the child, like, sneak out the back door, or, they get the child out of the house and into the vehicle, and then they ring the doorbell and let you know that they've got your child and that they're taking your child for services. Unfortunately, I've had this happen to me a number of times in Washington, which is among the many reasons I no longer live there. This is something a lot of parents don't know, but they do teach the kids this in school, that this is an option. Then what usually happens is they'll go to the local emergency room, and then they will be transferred to a youth mental hospital. And that could be for a period of, anywhere from 3 to 10 days. And in Washington State, if your child is over the age of 13, you as a parent don't get to have access to any of their medical or mental health information unless they have signed a release of information to the doctors for you to have that. And I will tell you that the doctors do not encourage them to sign that. So the child would have to almost voluntarily ask to do that, which no kid is going to do that. So it's the 988 thing kind of sounds like it's no big deal, but it's really terrible. I can say from experience, the 988 thing is really terrible, and it's going to, I think, get much worse. Another good policy that has come out this week is so back in 2023, the state of Ohio passed a constitutional amendment for abortion into their state constitution. And they have, they just needed a simple majority to pass this constitutional amendment, which in many states, such as Florida and Washington, both states have to have 60% to be able. I think Washington has. I could be wrong about Washington. I know in Florida you have to hit 60% of the vote to pass a constitutional amendment. But in Ohio, they only needed 50%. So they slimly passed the constitutional abortion amendment in 2023. And just yesterday, two Republicans in the House in Ohio sponsored a bill called the Ohio, I was going to say Idaho, Ohio Prenatal Protection Act. And this gives the preborn baby the same protections as any other human. And it would basically nullify the constitutional amendment. I've heard, I haven't, this is another rabbit hole I haven't gone down yet, but I heard that the governor does not support this bill, which wouldn't necessarily matter if they had enough people in the legislature to push it forward. But they, we'll see what happens. I tend to think that the legislature might feel like it's too pro-life, which is sad that there could be such a thing. But in February, I went to a fundraiser here in Sarasota for the Sarasota Medical Pregnancy Center, which is a pro-life pregnancy center. And the keynote speaker was the pro-life doc. His name is William Lyle. And he was talking about how the preborn baby is a patient. And he was talking about the surgeries that they do and all these different things that the preborn patient gets, like let's say they're having surgery. And so you have your surgeon, you have your anesthesiologist, and the mom has one and the baby has one. And they each have their separate providers for the mom and the baby. And the way that he was explaining it and talking about preborn baby as a patient, it was like, why don't, like, every Republican needs to hear this man speak about life, because it would really help them argue this issue. Well, he is going to come on and do an interview with me next week about this bill, and he's going to do, talking about baby as a patient, and so I'm really excited. He's a great speaker. He's very engaging, and you can find him at prolifedoc.org. But we are talking on Tuesday, so I hope to have that video go live on hopefully Tuesday evening sometime. So that's exciting about Ohio. It is nice to see legislators pushing forward pro-life policy, even though it may not, even though it may not go forward. We at least need to have the policy there so that we can start messaging on it and trying to move the needle in the other direction. So super excited about that. There was something that I skipped over that I was going to say. Let's see what you guys are doing in the chat over here. Oh yeah, impeach Bob Ferguson, a recall. And I've done a video about the recall process because it is, unfortunately, in Washington state, it's next to impossible to recall a political elected official. You have to have legal reason for it. They have to have broken the law. And then you have to get a judge that, sees your petition and why they broke the law. The judge has to agree with you and sign off on it before you can gather your signatures. In a state like Washington, where the judicial system is totally captured, there's almost no chance of finding a judge who will sign off on it. There were a couple of petitions for Jay Inslee. I think there were actually 3, 2018, 2021, and I think even 2022. And they didn't get past the judicial review. So I think it's pretty safe to say that that's not going to happen. What I would love to see people in Washington state do is there's a special election this year because there are several legislative seats that have opened up. One legislator passed away. A few legislators were plucked by Ferguson and pulled into the Ferguson administration. And so there are some seats where there were people that were appointed to those positions, and now they have to have a special election. And so there are a few seats that could potentially be flipped. Those were all Democrat seats. So they could potentially be flipped. So it would be great to see people looking to see if one of those is something that they could support. You've also got a lot of local elections happening this year, not just in Washington, but across the country. So your city council, your county council, your school boards, these are all really important races. And I think it's easy for us. And I totally was this way until like 4 years ago when I got schooled in all of this. I would really only turn out for a presidential election. Well, I didn't between 2004 and 2016, I did not vote. And that was all because of the Dino Rossi thing in Washington. But in 2016, I only voted for the presidential race. I didn't vote anything down ballot. I didn't know any better. But the local elections are really what matter the most to us and impact us in our daily lives to a great extent. So, find out what races are happening in your local area and find a candidate that you can support. You don't have to go door knocking. I would hate that. I would hate door knocking. I would be such a bad door knocker. But you can see, for me, I would be like, how can I support you on social media? How can I, get your content and your information and donations? And how can I drive people to you through social media? So you can do that. You can, email people in your community. The school board races is a huge thing. And this, I really believe that it's a foundational thing. So if we can start turning things around at a local level, eventually that will build up to a state level and eventually to a federal level. But we really have to start local. And I really, I posted a video on I think it was Sunday, after the No Kings rally that happened on Saturday, which is so fun. The whole No Kings rally thing is just there's so much irony in that. These are the people who wouldn't, forced you to social distance. They wouldn't come to Thanksgiving if not everybody was vaxxed. They thought you should get a jab to keep your job or to volunteer at school. Kids, I remember when things started opening up in Washington, your kid couldn't go to school if they didn't do a COVID test. They didn't necessarily have to be vaxxed, but they had to do a COVID test. And so these people are all about government telling them what to do. They were fine when Joe Biden got pulled out of as the Democrat nominee and they just slid Kamala into his place. They were fine with that. Like, nobody asked them. And yet they have a problem with Donald Trump and they have an issue with Kings. So it is quite ironic. But my video was about, it's impressive, right? Like, the left really has, and I think this has been like an always thing. I think for decades and decades, and the left has always been really organized. They've been on point with their messaging. They managed to draw people in with their messaging. And the right is like, several decades behind always. Like right now, we're maybe inching towards 2000. And so you had hundreds of thousands of people come out on Saturday for the No Kings rally. That's impressive. And yes, some of them were paid. And not all of them were paid. Come on, you guys. Like, hundreds of thousands of them were not paid. They went out there willingly because they actually care so much about these things. They care so much about trans rights and DEI and, all of these woke issues. They care. They deeply care about that. I mean, I would scroll through Facebook and I have, people that I've been friends with for a couple decades on Facebook. And they're like, oh, we went to the, No Kings protest in our town and took the kids. And during the day, it was mostly peaceful around the country. People spent their Saturday doing this because they believe in it. And as much garbage as we think the messaging is, and it truly is, they buy it and they're willing to spend the time, and they donate. They donate to candidates. They donate to causes. And, we're just like, well, we have jobs, and I get it. Like, I am a mother of 4. I go to school, I work. I get it. But we have to stop making excuses. And that's kind of the point I'm trying to make here is I post this video and in the comments was a ton of excuses. Well, they're paid. Well, we have jobs. Well, this. Okay, let's say they're all paid. Let's say they all don't work because that's their job is they just protest. Okay, well, what are we going to do? We just going to say that's the way it is? We have to get in the game. That doesn't mean that you have to do it during your workday, but you may have to give up. That might include uh, giving up an evening, one week, one night a month to go to your city council meeting so that you can make a public comment or you can at least know what's going on. In Washington state, like there's no excuse in Washington state. Washington state, I believe, has probably the easiest way for citizens to engage in the legislative process. You can testify on legislation by Zoom. My buddy Eric Pratt would testify on the job site. He'd testify from Hawaii. He'd testify from Pennsylvania. He's a single dad and he was working, he'd be on the job site testifying and you could see that he was on the, it was in his background. But if we're not willing to make some sacrifices to get in the game, nothing is going to turn around and they're just going to continue picking up more ground. I'm not saying it's fair. I'm not saying it's the ideal situation, but until we're ready to say, you know what, I love my country enough. I love my children enough. I want to save this for future generations. I'm going to do something. And if you can't do something or you just don't want to, well, then donate to people who can. Our team, like we're all primarily volunteers. If you want to help us, donate. Somebody can throw a donate. Maybe one of the ladies can throw a donate link in the chat. But if, we can't forever do this without getting paid for it. I mean, we're totally volunteers. And so, that's the thing. And think about candidates. Like, we've got our buddy Gabe is running for city council in Washington state up in Snohomish County. Well, if you live in Snohomish, you should be, throwing some money into his campaign because you want to save your city. If you don't have time, maybe you have money and you don't have to have a lot of money, $10, $5, $10. I mean, everything helps. So, kind of a little tough love here. But the complacency and the, almost like the unwillingness of people to do things. It kind of shocks me because I feel like people forgot what we went through during COVID. And, I think like people here in Florida, they only went through like 2 months of things being closed and then DeSantis opened everything back up. So they don't understand what it's like to live under a king where, like Jay Inslee had emergency powers for 975 days. If you wanted to go to a restaurant in King County for a period of time, you had to have a vaccine passport. And so I did not dine in King County. And I think we can't forget what that was like because that isn't just a one-off. That's not just a one-time deal. They are gearing up to come back around. And, you can, depend on Trump or Pam Bondi or who all, all the people in the Trump administration, while they're good people and they're doing good work, they're not coming to save you. They're not coming to save us. They can only do so much. And keep in mind, during Trump's first administration, that's when we had COVID. That's when we locked down. That's when, that's when the jab came out. He is daddy of the jab. So these are all things to remember. And while Trump does a lot of really great things, we can't forget, it's not just the Democrats. And it is, it's like Joy just said in the chat, and this is great. I'm going to put that up on the screen. I like that. We need Americans to find their 1776. I mean, we really do. And I think, I'm a Gen Xer. And so I grew up, living like a blessed American, I didn't know any different. And I think COVID, if nothing else, COVID told us, really showed us how differently life could look for us here in America with the wrong leadership. And it is our duty as citizens to hold our leaders accountable, and we can't hold them accountable if we don't even know what they're doing. And it kind of goes back to where I started this live stream with the SCOTUS decision that impacts Tennessee. It's a great win for Tennessee, and it sets precedent for other states that have enacted similar policy. But you have citizens that don't understand. They're like, well, our state's not going to abide by that. Well, of course they're not going to abide by that, because it doesn't impact any of the laws in your state. And so we really need people to be learning about, about our government and how government works. I think, for me, high school was a long time ago. It was, over 30 years ago. And so, maybe that's the extent of our civic education. And so maybe it's not all fresh in our memory, or we need a refresher. And so that's why we have our Thursday roundtable at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern every Thursday. It's a Zoom meeting. It's just a casual getting together for citizens. You can bring issues. You can just sit back and listen. You can participate as much or as little as you want, but it's really a way to get people connected and engaged wherever they are. And it's for people all around the country. And so maybe, Leslie, you can drop that Zoom link if you're still here into the chat for the Thursday Conservative Roundtable. But those are things like we're trying to educate people and give people the opportunities. Here's where you can go plug in, and making it as easy as possible for you guys to do that, to plug in. So I hope you'll consider joining us. What else? I think that was it. Are there any questions in the chat? Child calling. It doesn't look like it. Well, I appreciate you guys joining us today. I plan to be back next Thursday. On Wednesday evening at 6 p.m. Pacific, 9 p.m. Eastern. We are having our very first Parent Power Hour, hosted by our programs director, Joy Gersvald. This is part of our Empowered to Educate series that we have started because we want to encourage parents to homeschool, and we want to do everything we can to help equip them and give them the tools and resources that they need to pull their kids from the government schools and homeschool them. We did this specifically with Washington state families in mind because of the passage of House Bill 1296 this year, which really removes parent access to critical parts of their child's education. And so if you do not co-parent with the government, then you need to stop sending your child to Washington state's public schools and any other state that has similar laws. Colorado just passed a really bad law, the Kelly Loving Act, which forces parents even to call a child by their chosen name and chosen pronouns. And it's a very bad bill. So if you have children in Colorado public schools, get them out and homeschool them. So we wanted to launch this to give parents some support. And so this Thursday Parent Power Hour, it'll be the fourth Thursday of every month. So you can put it on your calendar. In the first half of the meeting, we will have a speaker, somebody who is involved in homeschool, might be like HSLDA, which is the Homeschool Legal Defense. It could be the Prescotts who wrote the book, Kids Don't Need School. A lot of these people that are involved in the homeschool movement around the country. So we'll bring in a speaker that will help give you information and resources and tools. And then the second half of the meeting is just a discussion. And Joy will be moderating a discussion. And so parents can bring their questions, and it's a great time to get help and support. Our first speaker next Wednesday, June 25th, is going to be a single mom from Washington State who homeschools her two children. One of them is special needs. So she's got a handle on the special ed part of homeschool education and so many other pieces of homeschool education. So she's going to be, it's one of those things where if she can do it, anyone can do it. So I think you'll be really encouraged and inspired by hearing Anne Marie on Wednesday. So you can find more information about that on our Substack and any of our social platforms, conservativeladiesofamerica.com, and the Substack is conservativeladiesofamerica.substack.com. And we'll be pushing out more information between now and next Wednesday, a Zoom link, and for you to register in advance of that as well. So I think that's everything for today. Thank you so much for joining me. I hope you guys have a great weekend, and I'll be here same time next Wednesday, 2 p.m. Pacific and 5 p.m. Eastern. Have a great weekend.